Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Online Store Success with me, your host, Jody Minto. Today, I've got a replay episode with you for an episode where I appeared on Jaryd Krause's podcast and shared my 6 to 7 figure e-com growth strategies I used in my fashion brand prior to selling that business. Now, if you are thinking about selling your business down the track as well, this is a great episode to tune in and learn about my experience and also learn about the different ways that you can sell your business and everything in between. If you love this episode or any of my episodes, I'd also be so grateful if you could go on and give me a little review and a little sentence or two about what you love about the podcast, because it makes my day and it helps others find my podcast too. Anyway, enough about that. Let's get on with today's episode. Let's go. Hi, welcome to the Online Store Success Podcast. I'm your host, Jody Minto, an e-commerce coach and meta ads specialist. Each week, I share with you practical strategies to help you grow a profitable online store that runs in school hours and supports your lifestyle. Let's get into it.
What are the two biggest mistakes e-com brands make when trying to go from 6 figures to 7 figures? Hi, I'm Jaryd Krause. I'm the host of the Buying Online Business podcast, and today I'm speaking with Jody Minto. She's an award-winning e-com mentor, founder, and 7-figure fashion brand owner, podcast host, speaker. She's based in Australia on the Central Coast. She's also a certified digital marketer, meta ad specialist, and life coach. She started a store online whilst working full-time, juggling young family, living in the Middle East. She shares that story until she grew it to 7 figures, having multiple stockists and customers worldwide. Jody also hosts the popular e-com podcast, Online Store Success, which I mentioned in the pod. It's number 2 in marketing podcasts in Australia for 2 weeks straight and frequently sits on the top 30 in Australia, Europe, and the Middle East and in the States. In this pod, we talk about her journey of starting her e-commerce brand. We don't typically talk about starting, but we did talk about scaling and why she sold the business. We talk about how she scaled that brand, but then why she descaled that brand. And we talk about why she sold it and a lot of mistakes she made in between, how she lost the forest from the trees in her approach to building out this business to a bigger business than she expected with far more things going on. We then move on to talk about something quite fascinating and how she tried to sell the business on Flipper, which actually failed her, and the mistakes that were made through just even listing that business on Flipper, even working with a broker through Flipper, and then how she did sell that business to an outside party and what that looked like, how she sold it for all cash. Then we move on to talk about the 2 biggest mistakes e-commerce brands make when they're trying to get from 6 to 7 figures and why one foot should go before the other, not what most people do, which is the wrong approach. Then we move into the mindset of scaling too much, working too much, and building a business that actually takes us further away from our goal. Of course, you know I love mindset. Now, obviously, this is not the only way I can help you free. If you're looking at buying a business like this, make sure you get my due diligence framework. It's made people millions of dollars and saved people millions of dollars. Buyingonlinebusiness.com/free resources where you get that. For now, jump into the pod. Enjoy. Jody, welcome to the pod. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. So happy to be here.
I'm looking forward to this. It's rare that we have an Aussie guest on the podcast. It's just me as the host.
It's always nice to chat to Aussies. I'm happy to to help.
Absolutely. In where I live in Indonesia and Bali, sometimes my friends, when there's a bunch of us Aussies together, my friends that are not Australian, when we're speaking too fast, they're just like, "What? Hang on, what's going on here?" Hopefully everybody listening isn't feeling that.
Yeah, I'll try not to talk too fast or like blend my words together as we often do.
We'll keep the Aussie slang out. Actually, a lot of people appreciate the Aussie slang.
There you go.
Yeah.
I have a lot of American... Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was going to say, I have a lot of American clients and I often use like the silly metaphors and sayings that we have and just get a lot of confused faces, like things like first in, best dress. And then everyone's like, what? I have to get dressed? What are you talking about? So I'll try to leave those out as much as possible too.
There's so much I want to pick your brain around growth of e-com businesses, the growth that you've got in your e-com biz. How long did you own your e-commerce business for before you sold it?
So I had it probably for 10 years, if you count the year or two where you're in that testing phase and trying to figure out exactly what is my product, and what is my brand name? Because I actually started the business when I was working in corporate and living in Dubai. Yeah, my e-com business at the time was it started as a fashion brand, and that was my exit strategy, so to speak, to get out of the corporate job. And I started at market stalls. And so it wasn't in the form that it is now, the women's resort wear brand. I actually started with like children's wear products and some organic perfumes and things like that. So if you count that experimental stage, it was 10 years, but the business is now 10 years old. I think it's probably in its 11th year with its new owners. So yeah, it's been a 10-year journey of all of the things.
Yeah, congrats. Being in business for 10 years is tough. Business is tough. I would like people to know that more and more. In the last podcast, we talked about how hard it is buying a business. It's not as easy as everybody thinks. It's simple, but it's not as easy. So also congratulations on the sale for that as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it felt like a real achievement to build something up from scratch and then get to a point where I felt it was complete for me, in that I had somewhat run out of ideas and I guess passion for it, and that I was able to then pass it on to new owners who then, could continue its life and its journey with some fresh meat.
Yeah, from fresh blood. So what sort of business model was it? So it's an e-com brand. And it was in the fashion niche. And what was the model? Were you selling direct to consumer? Were you selling 3PL warehouse? Were you selling on Amazon? What was the sales distribution and what were the marketing things?
Yeah. So I actually tried all of those different avenues. Initially, it was selling face-to-face when I first started the business at these weekend market stores, trying to figure out what my hero product was, what it was that I was actually going to zero in on. And then once I'd had that figured out, I launched my e-com site and was selling predominantly just to Dubai customers online. And the marketing then, it was, feels like a long time ago now, was Instagram. It was fairly new, and then email marketing and Facebook. That was predominantly how I was making my sales. I hadn't yet dipped into Facebook ads at that time. But then as I continued to run the business, I thought, right, this isn't happening fast enough. How can I drive more sales to the online store, and how can I get out of all of these weekend market stores that I was doing to keep things ticking along? So that's where then I dipped into Facebook ads. I hired a coach and they taught me how to run ads and started experimenting with those. Fast forward, probably I ran the business in Dubai, I want to say 3 or 4 years before then I moved back to Australia. And at that point, things started to ramp up a lot. And I opened up, the ads even just to New Zealand, Australia, a little bit to the US and still to Dubai. But I found once I was back in Australia, the Dubai sales dried up a little. But at that point then I thought, right, what else can I try? Let's have a look at Amazon. So I did do Amazon for quite a while, and I actually shipped a lot of inventory over to Amazon's warehouse in the US, and it was predominantly just serving a US market. But I didn't find it at the time it was a great experience. And this is probably going back about 6-7 years, where I found a couple of things. I think my strategy was wrong. I used Amazon to try and sell down my slow moving stock. So it was the stuff that people didn't really want so much. That's what I sent off to the US. So the strategy was a little messed up from the start. But then what I found was the buying behaviors were a lot different in the US, especially through Amazon, where people were returning things at such a high rate. It had, I think, 30, 40, 50% return rate, which was certainly not what was happening on the e-com site. So I found that exercise at the time wasn't particularly successful, and then brought all the product back to Australia. I also did do quite a bit of wholesale in different places. Initially, it was boutiques and things like that reaching out and inquiring and selling direct to them. Then I also sold on some different wholesale platforms like Fair, and we've got Hola in Australia, and sort of was like just a little bit on the side though. It was never the main avenue. It was never the main sales channel, because with wholesale, obviously we're selling it at almost half the price, so we have to sell a high volume of it, and then don't have the profit margins. And then what I was finding is that would deplete my inventory to sell direct to customers. So yeah, it was. I've kind of tried all of the things, and at the peak of the business, just before I sold it, where we were doing 7-figure years, predominantly, I'd say 70% of our sales were coming through paid ads, and the rest were coming through email marketing and social media. So Facebook ads certainly still played a really big part in it to try and meet that volume of sales that we were always trying to hit.
So yeah, congrats on working out how to just get it to the peak. That's an ongoing process in life and business. So 70% Facebook ads, 30% email marketing. Where were you dispatching and sending from home? Like, where did you manufacture the products? Where did you get the products?
Yeah.
And was the main distribution, was it through 3PL into Australia, or were you sending them out yourself?
It was a bit of a mix again. Coming back to the question around manufacturing, I initially was manufacturing all of the products, and we were known for kaftans and kimonos in Dubai. So that was what I found was a great opportunity for me when we were living there to get started, because they had tailors and fabric souks and things like that. So you go and buy a few meters of fabric and take it into a tailor with a photo or a very basic sketch saying, this is what I want to make. And that's how it started. But what I found then is that as sales grew, we couldn't keep up with demand. And because I was buying ready-made fabrics, if we identified a really good seller, a print that ladies loved, we would go back to try and buy more, and it was gone. So that's then when we shifted a lot of the manufacturing to China. In China, and this sounds probably really dodgy, but we found that if we had a good selling print that we'd found in the market in Dubai, say for example, we could then send it to China and they could recreate it. So then we could make it en masse. So we did a little bit of that. We also then had some of our own prints designed, and then the bulk of the manufacturing then was coming from China. We did test India and we did test Indonesia, Bali as well, but we found China just so efficient and had so much capabilities around even just different types of printing techniques, being able to provide all of the swing tags, the packaging, that was a one-stop shop and significantly cheaper. So that's where we ended up manufacturing the most in the end. But as far as then distribution, we tried all of the different options. So initially in the first probably the first 6 years of the business, it was all from home, picking and packing the orders from home, which I'm sure if any of your listeners are doing this right now, it's fine, it's efficient, but it's a headache if you want to go on holidays or if you've got to be somewhere else and then you miss the courier driver that's coming to pick up the satchels that day. So it was very haphazard and probably spent too much time doing that when we should have outsourced it to 3PL. I did then try a couple of different 3PLs here in Australia, and it was fairly new at the time, 3PLs, and it just was very messy. There was a lot of wrong orders being sent to customers, and it created quite a lot of headaches in that sense. So then we pulled it back again. Then in the height of COVID, when things really ramped up, I was at a point where there was, I think, 3 or 4 of us working in the business from my dining table. And I was like, I can't take this anymore. Like, the house is full of product. The house is full of staff. This is just, my whole world of work and business and family life is all blended into one. So I was like, I've got to get this business out of my house. So this is probably something I'd never, ever recommend anyone doing. I learned from my mistake is that I went and hired an office/warehouse. I signed a commercial lease and then put all this staff there, and then we were picking and packing the orders ourselves, but through our own space. But that experience was stressful, and I found that we hired quite a big space, and I felt this need to then fill it with staff, right? Like, we've got all these
ramp
empty
up the
space.
ads, ramp up the sales, pay for more staff.
Exactly. Like, we've got to make this bigger. And the whole reason for me for starting my own business, which I'm sure is, a very common goal, is to have this freedom and flexibility where we're not chained to an office or a computer from 9 to 5. And by me going and hiring this office space and having staff in it, there was this expectation of me having to be there from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. So I got to this point, I was like, hang on a minute, this isn't what I signed up for. What's happening here? But then also so many extra overheads that go with an office. We think, oh no, it's cheaper though than 3PL. It's not really, because you have things like insurance, and then you have to have the staff that actually work there, and they're generally all on the book. So you've got all of the insurances that go with that. You've got the electricity. You've got all of the things that all add up pretty quickly.
And your time managing them and managing the process, and then quality assurance, and like, it's just, but 3PL in Australia is still not as good as America. Like, America, it's been forced to be good in America because of Amazon.
Mm.
And Australia is only just getting that now, where Australia is starting to get more popular to use Amazon purchases versus
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
non-Amazon.
Yeah, it was messy. It was definitely messy, like in the early days for sure, and very frustrating, and just creating even more bottlenecks. And that's why we sort of went, no, that's okay, we'll do it in house. But then, like I said, I had all these staff, and then it was through COVID where we had 2020 and 2021, which were the golden years in ecom, and then it dipped, and then it'll pick up a bit, and then it dip again, and I've got this office, and I've got all these staff going, I don't need quite so many staff, but now I've got to make decisions on who's going to be let go. So I found it incredibly, incredibly stressful, and had this realization that I'd created myself this job. I created a business that I didn't actually, want. I didn't want to have to go and work, 5 days a week in the office. And I think that sort of led to a state of burnout, which is when I realized I didn't want to be in this business anymore. And then that's when I started to think about, okay, what's next?
Yeah. Yeah. And so then you sold the business.
And then I
Right.
sold the business. It wasn't a straightforward sort of like, that's it, I'm going to sell the business. I actually got so burnt out and so just done with it that I ended up closing down the business. I got to a point, and I'm sure people in business can relate to this, where you just go, that's it, I am done. I can't do this anymore. I'm just going to blow the thing up. So I actually made the decision to close the business, which again is this huge process when you have, I think there was 6 staff at the time, a commercial lease, all of these customers, all of these different obligations. So it was a very stressful time of then unpicking everything and letting staff go and trying to get out of commercial leases, which is not for the faint-hearted, and all of the different things that went with that. But I was like, you know what, I've just got to do this, go through these steps to get to the very end. I did have conversations with business brokers and even other business owners going, Jody, but you could sell this business. And at that point, though, I just was like, I can't even entertain the idea of what that process then looks like. So I ended up actually closing the business. And I ended up closing the business for, I think, a period of about 2 months or so. I had let everyone go. I had a chance to stop and just exhale. And then that's when, again, that the voices and even well-meaning folks were coming and saying, but you could sell it. You could sell it. You've built up this business for 10 years. You have this asset. You could sell it. You've got this website, this database, manufacturers. You've got inventory still, because I brought all of it home and left it in the garage. And I thought, okay, fine. So I started having conversations with different brokers, and they said, yeah, you could absolutely sell it, but you have to turn the lights back on. You have to relaunch the business, basically.
It's going to be buying a business that's not operating.
Exactly. That's closed down.
Buying stock, right? And even when we do buy a business with stock, is we need to do an audit on the stock to make sure it's, relevant.
Yeah.
And it's not depreciated. How did you go and choose, like you spoke to a few brokers, how did you choose the broker, and what broker did you end up going with, and why?
Yeah, so this was another interesting story where I spoke with a broker that I believe was recommended to me, and they were really helpful in helping guide me around, well, what is my business even worth, especially given I've closed it down and it's not currently running. So they were really good in giving me some guidance, but I never actually signed an agreement with them. What I then did, though, was investigate other options on how can I sell it, and I actually listed it on a website which I believe is called, is it Flipper or something?
Everybody on this pod will be laughing because everybody on this pod knows Flipper very, very well.
Yeah.
We've had the CEO on multiple times. I've been on the Flipper podcast multiple times. Flipper's very common in our space of buying and selling businesses. Yeah.
Okay.
So you listed it on Flipper?
So I did list it on Flipper, but what I found was that a few things. When I listed it on Flipper, they really inflated the value of what it was worth. Like, I was like, oh, come on. I think
is
they
this
told
through
me
a broker, or a broker did
Flipper.
this? A Flipper broker, or do you just self-listed it?
I think I used a broker. I think I paid a little extra, but I think initially when I put the numbers in, they're like, it's worth like $1 gazillion. And I was like, no, it's not. But then a broker was kind of, sort of assured me that, yeah, okay, it's probably a little inflated, but like maybe we meet about here, and dropped it down a little bit. But I had a few inquiries and even had a phone call with someone in Turkey, but nothing really eventuated. I then thought, you know what, I might put the feelers out even just in my own network. And so I can't remember exactly how I did this. I might have put it on the website banner. I might have shared it on social media, basically saying I'm taking expressions of interest from people that might be willing to buy it. And at this point, I'd made the decision, okay, fine, if I'm going to sell it, I've got to start running this business again. So I need to find a 3PL and a VA and all these kind of things. So I found a 3PL in Melbourne and sent all of the product to them, but was really transparent with them. And I said to them, look, this business is for sale. I will encourage the new owners to stick with you, but I can't obviously make any guarantees, but I just want you to, to be aware. And they actually turned around and said, really? We've been looking for a fashion brand to add to our portfolio. There was a husband and wife partners that said, we used to work in Country Road in fashion and things like that. And they had other businesses. They had post offices in Melbourne and a plumbing business and something else. And so they actually said, well, we're actually interested. Can we chat more? So long story short, they ended up buying it. This people that were actually, the 3PL owners, and we were in business together, and they ended up buying it. So it ended up being a complete private sale. And I didn't get as much as what Flipper was telling me I was going to get, even at the reduced valuation. But in the end, these guys made me a cash offer and said, we'll close it in, 2 months or something. And I was like, take it.
Great.
It's all
Great.
yours.
Thanks for sharing that, because it's very interesting for people listening. Everybody listening to this pod is looking at buying a business, and they've all been on Flipper. And it's so good to see what your use case is as a buyer, that you knew your business the valuation was inflated. And what actually happens for people listening is that this is typical, that a broker just wants to get as much money for your business as possible. And it happens in real estate too, where they inflate the price to make their commission and their fee worth it for you. So they're happy and you're happy, but it doesn't meet the market. And what it can happen is and it didn't happen for you because you found an outside buyer, but it can create a negative spiral where people see that it's been listed for X amount of time or months, and then it gets decreased, and then it gets decreased again and again and again. And people start to think, okay, this business sucks and it's not really worth anything they say it is worth. And then the poor person, like say if you stayed with Flipper, and you had to sell it for pennies on the dollar because unfortunately it just wasn't priced competitively. Yep. And the market watches this thing decay. And it's just very, very unfortunate. So there's also, for people listening, the looking at buying, is understand that just because something's dropping doesn't mean it's terrible. Do your due diligence. Don't just, put it to the wayside because you could be finding a great deal.
Exactly. Believe I sold my business for a third of what it was listed for on Flipper.
Wow.
And
that's crazy.
I think it's like selling a house, right? You're like, I'm going to try and get it as high as possible. But in the back of your mind, you're like, I don't think it's actually going to sell for this. So for me, I ended up selling the business for, I believe it was like 1 year's net profit. That was the amount. I was happy with that because at my stage in the business, I was done. I'd already checked out. I was exhausted. Yep. I've had my coaching business alongside of my fashion brand for about 8 years. So I knew I had something else to shift straight to.
Yeah.
And, someone's like, well, here's my offer, and here are the terms. And I was like, absolutely happy with that. Let's go.
Right. Congratulations on the exit. And so it's not much more to talk about. It's a cash offer, 1 year multiple. I want to move into your coaching. So you help people scale their e-commerce brands. Are you typically helping people go from 6 figures to 7 figures? What sort of e-com brands is it one type of e-com brand, or is it any type of e-com brand? Like, what is your coaching on?
Yeah, so I specialize in fashion and lifestyle brands. So obviously I've had that lived experience of creating a fashion brand. I work with lots of children's wear, homewares, even pet accessories, things like that. So very much that fashion and lifestyle-y space. I have a number of different programs, but I believe my specialty is getting people from the 6 to 7 figures revenue mark in a year. That's where I think it gets really fun and really exciting because we've already got that proof of concept. If they're already doing sort of 100K, they've generally got the foundation solid, and it's just about figuring out which marketing levers we need to pull and what overarching product and business strategies we need to address in order to scale it pretty quickly.
Let's talk about that. So if somebody's making 100K or a couple 100K, typically what are the two most common mistakes e-commerce owners are making trying to scale? And then what are like maybe the two things they need to be doing differently?
Yeah. So again, a lived experience of the mistakes that I made myself. When things all of a sudden scale quite quickly and we are, giving ourselves a high five and going, yeah, this is great. What we often do, well, I certainly did, and I see other e-com founders and business owners make this mistake, is that then they go and make purchasing decisions for their business based on the absolute high, right? The height of summer, where then they go and rent a commercial space, they go and fill it with staff, they'll go and buy a Range Rover as a company car and all these kind of things without appreciating that businesses ebb and flow. Right now, we're in a pretty tricky economy. A lot of people have had like a pretty rough year or two. And when we are running a business and building a business, we have to keep that in mind. Like, it might be awesome now, but I want to make really smart strategic decisions. I want to make sure that I'm not stretching myself too thinly cash flow wise. And I see this a lot. Where people, particularly once they hit the seven figures, are like, yes, this is awesome. And then they go off and, really make decisions that then negatively affect their bottom line, in short. So that's something that I see happen a lot.
Don't go spend the money on just
it's
materialistic things.
Exactly. Yeah. And just know that every big decision should be well thought out. I mean, chat with your accountant about it. Things like office leases, that was so traumatic to try and then get out of that office lease. I think I had about 18 months left. I basically had to pay it out the whole 18 months, but the hell they put me through. There was lawyers involved. Like, if you sign these contracts, it's very difficult. Even if you hire, I know in Australia, it's very difficult to let people go. If you hire a staff member, you have to go through, and the business say the sales have dipped, you have to go through a redundancy process. And that alone is a headache, and you need to get legal advice and all this kind of thing. So just make sure that you have that kind of end goal in mind. It's like, I want a profitable business. Also, do I want a lifestyle business where I can run it from home or Mexico or Bali? Or do I want to be in a warehouse with lots of staff? So just keeping that end goal in mind, I think, is really, really important. And a lot of people don't. They get just swept up with what's happening at that current time and make these decisions that then they pay for later.
It's pretty common when you're in the entrepreneurial space to just, if you want to grow your business, then you're just consuming content around growth, grow, and everything else is secondary to growth. And when everything else is secondary to growth, we forget, like, why are we even trying to make this money? Is it so we just have more money so we can just spend it on things? Or is it actually like, what is our number one value? Is it like, do you want to be spending more time doing what you love with the people you love? Or do you actually really want that Range Rover, which means you need to work it more?
Yeah,
maybe.
Exactly.
Exactly. So I totally agree with you on making sure you remember what the end goal is or what you're working towards versus just more. Because, hey, Jody, imagine if you just grew your business to a certain size where you had one VA, you're making maybe $500,000 a year, and you've got a 3PL and you got somebody running your ads. This is what I help people with their businesses, is like, they're trying to just do all the things. And it's like, no, let's take them all off your plate. And they're like, well, how is the business going to grow? Well, like, it's not going to grow if you're tired and you can't make good decisions.
Yeah. And then you end up wanting to blow it up, like what I did. You get to the point where you're just so burnt out and exhausted, right? So, yeah, absolutely. And I literally made those mistakes. I bought the Range Rover, I hired all the staff, I got the commercial lease, and then was like left to just unpick it all. And yeah, I have a mastermind program where it's ladies only. Sorry, guys. But it's I've literally got a lady in there that is doing 7 figures a year. She has a 3PL. She has one VA. She's managing her ads herself, and that's what we do, a lot of like upskilling, and I review ads and things like that inside of my coaching programs. But she's got like the VA helping with the social media, the email campaigns each week. And, the net profit on a business like that is like a dream come true versus my reality, which had all of these staff and all of these overheads that couldn't easily be let go. Her business model is like, yes, this is exactly what is possible, this $1 million micro business that you can run from home in school hours. And I find, for me, a lot of my clients, that is the dream versus having a big warehouse. But they don't usually realize they don't want the warehouse and staff until they've actually experienced it themselves and gone, okay, this is no fun.
Exactly. Yeah. I also think it's a paradox that people believe, because it's been fed to us so much, which has actually caused me a lot of damage in my life, is that if you work more, you can earn more money, and you need to work hard. And if I think you get to a certain point where you stop. You can work more, but you can't make more money. Or if you were to just, I've worked out that if I decrease my hours, then I'm far more rested. I make better decisions, and I don't have to work as much. And then I use my resources to work for me versus me working for the
Yeah.
resources.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's got an inverse effect, and I
Yeah.
think that's why, for your lady in your group, for her to grow from 7 to 8 figures, she shouldn't have to do more work. It's just about having the business grow to a certain stage where she hires a GM that then hires a fractional CMO and a fractional CFO.
Yeah.
Versus, and then
absolutely.
she's even further away from the business and more money.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree, about I think we all have a level of capacity. Yes, we have X amount of hours in our day and our week, and we could keep working, but we get to a point where we're no longer productive, and we end up doing that busy work. We think, I should be doing this. And as we get more and more tired, we end up kind of a bit more distracted, and then we're spreading ourselves everywhere and not doing anything particularly well. So yeah, I totally agree on that as well around, I, for example, don't take any coaching calls on a Monday. Like Monday's my day for, thinking and planning my podcast episode for the week and doing my marketing and just getting ready for the week ahead. And I still have one child in high school. So I have bookends on my days, right, where I have to go and pick her up from wherever.
Yeah.
And I think that actually works well. I do work with people that don't have family responsibilities, where they do have the opportunity to work themselves 24 hours a day. And it's not effective. Their business is no more successful than someone else that is just doing it in shorter amount of hours. They're just more burnt out and tired and exhausted.
Yeah. For myself, without all those sorts of responsibilities in my life, I had to force myself to find things to do so I couldn't work, to get myself down to a couple of hours a week, and then have to work with my own mindset to feel okay and not feel guilty around not working. Like, why is everybody else working so much? I don't need to, but I've been chasing this dream for 10 years. Why should I put myself through guilt for wanting to be in that position? I know it's a privilege. I'm very privileged to be able to say that. I've done the work to be able to get there. And I think more people should realize that they can do that too.
Absolutely.
That's what you're helping people do. I want to come back to ads, Facebook ads. And maybe you've just got these philosophies around marketing in ads that can lend across to other platforms like Google and TikTok and all that sort of stuff. What are the two biggest mistakes people are making with their marketing in sort of paid ads?
I see a lot of people view ads and try to attempt ads to fix somewhat of a conversion problem. So not addressing perhaps what's happening over here with the offer, whether it's the product, the website, the messaging, the branding, positioning, whatever. A lot of people seeing ads as the fix-all. And the businesses that have got a big conversion problem over here generally find that their ads don't work or they're really expensive. So I see that happen quite a bit, and it takes a little bit of a mindset shift around, okay, ads are meant to be the gasoline that we pour on top of what's already working. So if it's not working over here, if we're not in an e-commerce space, I generally use the benchmark. If you're not getting a 1% conversion rate on your online store, ads are probably not the next step. It's figuring out, like, how can we get more people to actually buy, the people that are coming, whichever channels they're coming through. And then once we've got that sitting perhaps around a 1%, that's then when we go and, pull the lever for Facebook ads, pour the gasoline on top and then just amplify what's working. So I do see that as a bit of a mistake. I also see people, and this is hard because there's Facebook ads, there's a lot of moving parts, or any kind of paid marketing, there's a lot of moving parts. It's like, what is my strategy? Who am I trying to attract? What am I trying to sell? And they make all of those decisions and they get to the ad creative part and then they just slap something together, which is really ordinary and not appealing and not scroll stopping. And then people say, oh, but my ads are not working. And then we see the ad and it's like, well, would you stop scrolling in your feed to click on your ad? Probably not, right? So not enough time and effort put on the actual ad creative itself is a big mistake I see, because Meta particularly has moved so far around towards AI and broad audiences and things like that, where that part of the campaign structure and the audience selection is a lot easier. We don't really have to try and map that out as much. It's not as complex as what it was, but the hardest part now is making sure that our ad's really good. So I do see that a lot, and people will come to me and say, Jody, but my ads aren't, working, or they're costing too much. And we go, okay, well, that all looks fine, but what are you actually showing them? And then we look and say, like, the messaging's wrong. We're talking about how wonderful your product is, but we're not actually talking to the customer and the benefits to them and why they should even consider this thing. We're very much saying, here's my wonderful, pen, and it's got 4 colors. And it's like, well, what's the benefit to the customer? What's that so what factor to them? Because if we're not clearly communicating that in our actual ad creative, people will just keep scrolling on by, which then means our ads don't work or they're really expensive.
Absolutely. So basically, creative, Facebook creative or ad creative, and conversion rate being first. With conversion rate, what are 2 things that people can typically just fix in their conversion? What are the 2 most common things that people are doing wrong that if they tweak it, they can go from maybe a 0.5% conversion rate to a 2% conversion rate, something like that?
So on the website itself, there's certainly different things that you can do to improve the chances of someone clicking through and buying something. I have this sort of philosophy, I suppose, where, it's click, click, buy. Can someone find on your website what they want? Click, add it to cart, click and buy. We want that process to be as uncomplicated as possible. We don't want people to...
Minimal amount of clicks.
Exactly. Minimal amount of clicks, because especially in the fashion space, what I see a lot in websites when people come to work with me, we'll go to the product page and then there's no size guide, there's no refund policy, there's no information on shipping. They're all off on other pages in the footer somewhere. So people are having to 15 clicks to get all of the information they need before they can confidently go in and add it to cart and purchase. Streamlining that process, making sure that the product pages particularly have all of the information on them that a customer needs to make that buying decision. We want the size guides if you're selling things. We need the fabrication of if it's apparel. How much does it cost for shipping and how long will it take, and the return information. What happens if...
policy.
Yeah, what if this doesn't suit me? What's your return policy? They're generally the main questions people have. But then also, do we have good quality product imagery and videos and a description? Because often people will just, especially resellers that are getting images from the actual brand, and then they're just throwing that up, and they're often grainy. We can't really zoom in and see the fabric and things like that. So we want to make sure that customers have everything they need in order to make that purchasing decision.
Sales 101 is just understand what their objections are and just remove them with all the data and information, which is, like you said, refund policy, time to get their size, the fabric, and then also what is it going to look like on my body? Do I like that look? Do I not like that look? Is it going to pair well with this or that?
Yeah. So that's one thing. Another thing too is this is sort of off the websites, so to speak, where we're actually assessing the traffic that is coming to the website, where they're coming from, because sometimes the website itself and the product pages might be really great, but then we go and look at, okay, what is this traffic that's coming to the site? Why is our conversion rate so low? And what we see a lot is then if people have been running traffic ads, for example, from Meta, they haven't actually selected it's a sales ad, they're running traffic ads. What we see is we're getting a high volume of low quality traffic to the website, and then that negatively affects the conversion rate. So sometimes it could be that versus it could be a problem on the actual website or with the product pages or the product itself. So we need to make sure that we are looking at it from 360 degrees to make sure that we're not trying to fix something over here when the problem's actually over here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So they're the kind of big things. And then it's even just looking at the product itself. Sometimes if the product proven? Is it viable? Is it desirable for customers? I see some pretty random products, and particularly if people are doing like drop shipping and stuff like that, sometimes they're just buying gadgets
whatever
or whatever.
They can. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever they can. And it's like, but do people actually want this? Is there a demand for this? Is this available on Temu and 500 other listings on Amazon, for example? So just really looking at what the product is too.
Yeah, absolutely. Product market fit. And, if you've got 10 or 15 products, what are the top selling products? And focus on the conversion rate of that first, and then the ads for that, and then apply what you've learnt from that to your second best product before you just try and do it all across the board.
Exactly.
I don't know, we could go on for a couple more hours, Jody, but you've got your own podcast on this as well. Where can we send people to check out your pod?
Yeah, so you can just search my name, Jaryd Minto, or Online Store Success in any of the podcast listening apps, and you'll find me over there. I do talk a lot about ads over there and talk a lot about scaling and marketing and everything like that. So yeah, you can find me over there, and you can find my website, jodyminto.com, and podcast is over there as well.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience in the highs and lows of your business, scaling it, descaling it, selling it. Yeah, I really appreciate you. And everybody, I'll be putting links to where Jody said you can go check her out in her pod and our site as well in the show notes. So again, thanks again, Jody.
You're most welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening, guys. See you on the next one.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Online Store Success with me, Jaryd Minto. If you loved it, please share it with your friends on Instagram and tag me at @IamJodyMinto so I can say thank you. And if you really want to make my day, please go ahead and leave me a review on Apple Podcasts and give me a follow. If you'd like my help in starting or scaling your online store, be sure to check out my free resources and programs at jodyminto.com. Thanks again, and same time, same place next week. Bye for now.